When I pulled into my driveway that Thursday afternoon, I didn't expect anything unusual. I had returned from my work trip one day early, hoping to surprise my family with a calm night at home. But as soon as my tires touched the gravel, I saw something that didn't make sense. 2 police cars parked directly in front of my garage, lights flashing, but sirens off. My heart jumped, confused and alarmed. I wasn't speeding, I wasn't trespassing, and this was my own house. Before I could even step out of my car, HOA President Karen, yes, the Karen of our neighborhood, stormed toward me, pointing aggressively as if I were a criminal. That's him. That's the intruder. She screamed to the officers, her face red and frantic, her voice cracking dramatically. I blinked, stunned, because she was talking about me. The officers turned toward my vehicle with immediate caution, one hand already resting on his holster. "Sir, step out of the vehicle slowly," one instructed. I raised my hands, confused but compliant. As I opened the door, I tried to explain, "This is my house. I live here." But Karen cut me off, yelling, "He doesn't. He's been breaking in. I have proof." Her performance was so convincing that even I started questioning what she thought she was seeing. The cops hesitated. Something was off. They looked uncomfortable, suspicious, but not entirely convinced by her story. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something that didn't add up. My front door, slightly open. I always lock it, always. The officers noticed it at the same time and exchanged a glance. "Ma'am, we're going to clear the property," one said firmly. Karen's face drained of color. That was when I realized she was terrified, but not of me. She was terrified they were about to find something inside, something she never intended anyone to see. My stomach tightened as the officers moved toward the house. Something wasn't right. Something big was coming. The officers approached the doorway carefully, one stepping inside with a hand on his flashlight, the other radioing dispatch for backup. I stood outside, my pulse hammering as I tried to make sense of Karen's sudden panic. She was pacing in frantic circles, muttering curses under her breath, and glancing at the house as though expecting it to explode. The entire situation was so surreal that, for a moment, I wondered if maybe someone else really had broken in. But as soon as the officers entered my living room, I saw both of their expressions shift from alert caution to stunned disbelief. One of them called out, Sir? You might want to see this." Karen instantly lunged forward. "No, he can't go in. You can't let him." She tried to physically block me, but the second officer stopped her with a firm arm. "Ma'am, step aside." Inside, the scene was something out of a bizarre reality show. My couch cushions were displaced. Piles of clothes, none of them mine, were stacked in corners. And on the kitchen counter sat an open cereal box next to a half-empty wine bottle. But the worst part wasn't the mess. It was the suitcase. A pink floral suitcase sitting open on my dining table, filled with personal items that definitely belonged to Karen. My jaw dropped. The officer approached me quietly and said, "It looks like someone has been staying here." For a while, Karen exploded, shouting excuses that made absolutely no sense. "It's not what it looks like. It was an HOA emergency. I had to protect the property. I had to make sure it was safe." One officer raised an eyebrow. "By living in it?" he asked flatly. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. She had no answer. I stepped further inside, shock turning into anger as the reality hit me. She had been living in my home, eating my food, sleeping in my bed, using my utilities, all while claiming the house was vacant and unsafe so she could oversee it. My fists tightened. The officers exchanged a glance again. "Sir," one said, "we're going to need to ask you some questions." And "Ma'am, you're going to need to explain yourself." Karen began backing away as if considering running. And honestly, I hoped she would. Asterisk before the officers questioned me further, they continued inspecting the rest of the house. I followed behind cautiously, bracing myself for what else they might find. Every step revealed a new violation of my privacy. A coffee mug with lipstick marks that weren't mine. My guest room bed rumpled and clearly slept in. And my home office cluttered with food wrappers and crumpled HOA papers. But the shock turned into something darker when they opened the master bedroom door. The sheets were pulled back as if someone had gotten up minutes ago, and the faint smell of perfume still lingered in the air. My stomach twisted. She hadn't just squatted here. She had made herself completely at home. The officer closest to me cleared his throat and said, "Sir, this didn't happen overnight. She's been staying here for days, maybe weeks." From the hallway, I heard Karen babbling rapidly, trying to build a story around her actions. He left town. The house was unsecured. Someone had to keep an eye on it. She sounded more desperate by the second. The officers weren't convinced. I could see it in their faces. They had seen squatters before, people trying to claim homes they didn't own, but this was different. This was the HOA, president abusing her authority in the most insane way possible. One officer stepped toward me. "Mr. Miller, did you give anyone permission to stay in your home? Any friends? Relatives? House sitters?" I shook my head slowly. No, absolutely not. I didn't even tell the HOA I was leaving early. That was when the major red flag clicked in the officers' minds. If I hadn't told anyone in the neighborhood I was gone early, how did Karen know the exact day and time to break in? How did she even have access to my locked house in the first place? I felt my chest hollow out. The officer noticed my change in expression and asked, "Sir, does anyone else have a copy of your keys?" I hesitated, then answered truthfully, "Only my brother, and he's out of state." We all turned to look at Karen, who had stopped pacing and now looked like a cornered animal. Sweat clung to her forehead, her eyes darting between the officers and the front door as if measuring her chances. Something told me she wasn't just using my home, she had done something far more manipulative to gain access. And we were about to find out exactly how deep this went. The officers led her to the dining table and instructed her to sit down, which she did reluctantly, tapping her foot so hard the chair vibrated. I sat across from her, arms crossed, trying to remain composed. "Ma'am," Officer Reyes began, "we're going to need a clear explanation. Start from the beginning. How did you get inside this home?" Karen folded her arms and lifted her chin with fake confidence. "As HOA president, I am responsible for property oversight. Residents frequently neglect their responsibilities, and it's my duty to ensure safety." She said the words like she was reciting a speech she had practiced in the mirror. Officer Reyes didn't buy it. "That's not the question. How did you enter?" She swallowed hard. "Well, the front door. It was unlocked." The other officer and I both stared at her in disbelief. I had triple locked that door before leaving and confirmed it on my home camera app. But then I remembered something I'd nearly forgotten. Maintenance request from the HOA 2 months ago to inspect the door hinges. I had declined it. They said it was routine. I said no. Now it made sense why Karen was looking everywhere except at me. "You didn't have authorization to enter my home," I said coldly. "So either you picked my lock or someone gave you access. Which is it?" She clenched her jaw. The room grew so silent I could hear the buzzing of the refrigerator. Officer Reyes leaned in. "Ma'am, if you obtained access through any illegal method keys, lock tampering, or misusing a maintenance staff, we need the truth now." Karen shot to her feet, screaming. I was protecting the neighborhood. Her voice cracked and tears streamed down her face. You travel all the time. Your house was empty, anyone could have taken it. So you took it? I snapped. She froze. The officers didn't move, letting the weight of the moment settle. Finally, she whispered, "It wasn't supposed to be like this," and collapsed into the chair. Something inside her broke as she muttered words that made everything click into place. I wasn't going to stay long. I just needed a place. Just for a while. My breath caught. This wasn't just a power trip. She had been desperate, hiding something, and whatever she was hiding had forced her into my home. But the real fear settled in when Officer Reyes asked the next question. "Ma'am, what are you hiding from?" She looked at him with trembling lips. "My husband," she said. "He can't know where I've been." The entire room fell silent again, but this time the story had taken a turn none of us expected. As the hours passed after Karen's removal from the house, I stayed awake, pacing around the living room, replaying every warning sign I had ignored. The faint smell of her perfume still lingered in the hallway, proof of how long she had been secretly living inside my home. Officer Daniels told me to lock every door and window until they prepared the eviction documents for her illegal occupation. But just when I thought the worst was over, things took another turn. Around midnight, I heard footsteps on my porch slow, dragging footsteps that froze me instantly. I turned off the lights, peeked through the blinds, and there she was again, standing on the porch like a shadow that refused to detach from my life. She wasn't alone this time. 2 HOA board members were with her, carrying clipboards and a stack of papers as if they had come to conduct another inspection. It was clear Karen had convinced them that I was in violation for entering my own property early. I opened the door just enough to speak through the gap, telling them the police had already confirmed her trespassing. But instead of backing off, Karen stepped forward, pointing at me and screaming that I had broken HOA procedure and that she was acting HOA president while the real president was out of town. The board members seemed confused, but they didn't want to challenge her. Just then, headlights cut across the driveway. Officer Daniels was back, returning to check on the situation. The moment he stepped out of his patrol car, Karen's confident posture collapsed. Daniels approached with the body cam already recording, asking why she had returned after being warned. The footage clearly showed her trying to argue that she had authority over all homeowner schedules. But Daniels shut her down. He reminded her she had no legal standing, no right to enter the property, and no permission to bring the board there at midnight. The board members quickly stepped back, realizing they were being filmed. Karen tried to twist the story again, but Daniels informed her that repeat unlawful entry could be classified as attempted squatting. The color drained from her face. That night, for the first time, she looked genuinely scared, not of me, but of getting caught by the law she had pretended to control for years. After that confrontation, I knew I had to take action before things escalated even further. Karen had already crossed every possible line, breaking into my home, manipulating the HOA, and using my absence to treat my house like her private vacation spot. I contacted a property attorney the next morning and explained the entire situation. The attorney didn't even seem surprised. Apparently, HOA officials abusing authority was more common than people realized, but Karen's case was extreme. She advised me to file an official report, request an emergency HOA meeting, and demand a security audit of the entire neighborhood. By noon, I had gathered documents, camera footage, and timestamps to prove Karen had been living in my home for 3 weeks. But right when I thought I was finally one step ahead, the attorney called me with alarming news. Karen had already filed a complaint against me, claiming I had abandoned my property and that she had moved in temporarily to protect it. It was the most unhinged lie I had heard yet. But it explained why she acted so boldly. She thought she had already built a fake legal shield for herself. Thankfully, her story didn't hold up. When I arrived at the emergency HOA meeting, Officer Daniels was also present at the board's request. He played the body cam footage of Karen breaking rules, arguing at midnight, and admitting she had keys to my house keys she was never given. The room went silent. The real HOA president, Mr. Halpern, stared at Karen like he was seeing her true self for the first time. She tried to defend herself, blaming stress, workload, the community, even me. But nothing worked. Daniels reminded the board that lying to the police, trespassing, and illegal occupancy were grounds for charges. Karen's voice cracked as she insisted she was misunderstood, but the board voted unanimously to remove her from her position effective immediately. As she stormed out of the room, she glared at me with a hatred that could melt brick. But for once, she had no power left to use against me. The board apologized, promised new security measures, and assured me Karen would be barred from coming near my property again. It felt like the first real step toward peace, but deep down, I knew Karen wasn't the kind of person who walked away quietly. The days following Karen's removal from the HOA board were strangely too quiet for someone like her. Normally, when Karen lost even a little bit of control, she responded instantly with more chaos, more accusations, more unannounced inspections. But this time, her silence dragged on for almost a week, and that made me more uneasy than her harassment. I changed the locks, installed additional cameras, and even placed motion sensors around the house. Every time a notification popped up on my phone, I felt a surge of adrenaline, expecting to see her face plastered against one of my windows again. Instead, the footage usually showed stray cats or neighborhood kids. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was planning something bigger behind the scenes. Then one afternoon, I received a strange envelope taped to my front door, no name, no postage, just my address written in shaky handwriting. Inside was a printout of an email Karen had sent to several homeowners, painting herself as a victim of a vast conspiracy. She claimed the HOA had been infiltrated, that I was dangerous, and that she had been forced out to silence her. Reading it made my blood boil, not because the accusations were ridiculous, but because a few homeowners had actually replied, expressing sympathy and worry. Karen was trying to build an army of supporters. I forwarded everything to Mr. Halpern and Officer Daniels, and both agreed this wasn't just petty drama anymore. Karen was escalating into something more unstable. That evening, I attended a neighborhood gathering where whispers filled the air. Some neighbors hesitated to make eye contact with me. Others approached quietly to ask what really happened. I explained the situation calmly, showing them the official police statements and footage to clear the air. Most people believed me immediately, shocked at how deeply Karen had manipulated them for months. But a handful still looked unconvinced, likely holding on to the fantasy of the protective HOA hero she pretended to be. That's when it hit me. Karen didn't need her title to cause havoc. She just needed influence, fear, and confusion. And she was good at sowing all three. That night, as I sat on the porch watching the streetlights flicker, I realized the storm wasn't over. Karen was regrouping. She was preparing. And knowing her past behavior, she wasn't going to strike softly. She was going to try to destroy me completely in one calculated blow. 2 nights later, the blow finally came, and it was worse than anything I had expected. At around 3 a.m., I was jolted awake by loud banging on my front door, followed by the unmistakable flash of emergency lights outside. For a split second, I thought Karen had convinced the police to come after me again, but when I stepped outside, the truth was even more disturbing. Multiple people, from the looks of it, had vandalized my property. The garage door was spray painted with the words LIAR and fraud The side wall had deep scratches carved into the siding. My mailbox had been smashed in, and one of the motion cameras had been ripped clean off the wall. A small crowd of half-awake neighbors had gathered outside, whispering, some shocked, others pretending to be shocked. Officer Daniels arrived moments later, followed by backup. He took one look around and sighed heavily, as if he had already guessed who was behind this. The officers began checking the footage from my remaining cameras, and sure enough, around 2:47 a.m., 3 hooded figures approached my house. One was small in stature, but moved with sharp, angry gestures, exactly how Karen moved during her outbursts. The other 2 were likely the homeowners she had convinced with her false narrative. Daniels shook his head, muttering that she was spiraling and becoming dangerous. He reassured me that this was now officially a criminal case involving vandalism, harassment, conspiracy, and retaliation. As the officers documented everything, one neighbor approached me quietly, guilt visible on her face. She confessed that Karen had been holding late-night meetings in her backyard, riling up the few people who supported her, claiming she had been wronged, evicted unfairly, and that I was destroying the community. She told me Karen had become obsessed, repeating the same lies, insisting she needed to take back power or prove a point. Hearing that only confirmed what I feared. Karen wasn't just angry. She was unraveling. The police assured me they would track down everyone involved, but deep inside, I knew Karen wouldn't wait for them to catch her. She would come back, and next time, she wouldn't settle for vandalism. She wanted revenge. She wanted control. And she wanted her twisted version of justice. But she didn't realize something important. I was done being her quiet target. I was ready for her. The next morning, everything shifted. I was exhausted, frustrated, and emotionally drained, but I was also done letting Karen control the situation. Instead of hiding inside and waiting for the next attack, I decided to take action that would stop her permanently, not out of revenge, but for my safety and the safety of everyone she manipulated. My first move was meeting Officer Daniels at the station to file a full restraining order. This time, with vandalism evidence, group harassment, and the footage clearly showing Karen leading the attackers, the paperwork moved quickly. Daniels assured me the case would go straight to the district attorney. Then, something unexpected happened. As I walked out of the station, an elderly man approached me quietly. He introduced himself as Stanley Griggs, Karen's father. His hands were shaking, not from age, but from fear. He explained that Karen had always been this way, that her obsession with control went back years, long before she joined the HOA. He apologized for everything she had done and warned me that she had completely moved out of her home weeks ago, meaning she had likely been living secretly in vacant houses or basements without permission. That revelation hit me like cold water. Karen wasn't just obsessed. She was desperate, unstable, and had nothing to lose. That made her dangerous. I thanked him, but inside, my unease grew. Returning home, I found a police cruiser parked outside. Daniels stepped out and informed me they had located Karen. She had broken into a foreclosed house 4 streets away and barricaded herself inside, ranting about conspiracies and claiming the HOA had been overtaken by traitors. When officers attempted to approach, she screamed my name repeatedly, blaming me for everything: her eviction, her job loss, her reputation. Daniels warned me to stay inside for my own safety because they expected her to run. That night, every creak, every rustle outside made my heart pound. But I reminded myself, I wasn't the same person she ambushed at the start of this nightmare. I had proof, support, and the law on my side now. Karen's grip on the neighborhood was slipping, and she knew it. The question now was simple. Would she give up, or would she take one last desperate swing? The last swing came at sunrise. I heard frantic knocking at my door fast, panicked, not like Karen. When I opened it, I found Officer Daniels and 2 deputies. They said the moment they moved in to arrest Karen, she slipped out a back window and sprinted across yards, heading straight toward my street. Before I could react, a scream echoed outside. Karen burst out from between 2 houses, barefoot, wild-eyed, and covered in dirt. She ran directly toward my porch, shouting accusations, claiming she had every right to be there, that I had ruined her life. But before she could reach me, Daniels and his team tackled her safely to the ground. Even as they handcuffed her, she kept yelling that she was the real HOA president, that the neighborhood belonged to her, and that she would never stop fighting. Watching her unravel was surreal terrifying, but also revealing. The Karen who once strutted through the neighborhood with a clipboard and fake authority was gone. What remained was a person swallowed by obsession, lies, and the need to control others. As the police car pulled away, I finally felt the weight lifting from my chest. The neighborhood slowly returned to normal over the next few days. Homeowners apologized. The HOA board issued a formal notice banning Karen permanently, and multiple families came forward with stories of her years-long intimidation. For the first time in months, the street felt peaceful. No surprise inspections, no banging on doors, no fake violations taped to mailboxes, just quiet. I stood by the lake behind my house the evening after the chaos ended. The sun reflected on the water in calm ripples, the kind Karen had disrupted for so long. And I realized something important. I didn't just win against her. I reclaimed my life, I reclaimed my home. And the neighborhood moved on from someone who had held it hostage for years. As for Karen, the charges against her were serious trespassing, vandalism, harassment, property damage, breaking and entering. Daniels told me she would be mandated into treatment. Maybe one day she would recover. Maybe not. But either way, her reign of fear was over. And with that chapter closed, I finally stepped into a future she could no longer touch.